Now then, good morning, welcome back to the Yorkshire Bike Mechanics YouTube channel. My name's Dave K. I hope you're all well and you're having a good week and the sun is shining wherever you are, because it's certainly not shining here. In fact, it's pretty overcast and it's dull and it's quite chilly as well today. Now, a couple of months ago we did a video on this little bad boy here. It's called the Bike Finder and it's a GPS tracker for your bike. The video went really well, we got loads and loads of comments and I felt it were a good success. Now we got this product given for us to review, so we think it's only good if we give it to somebody else. So that is going to be a giveaway this week, probably later on in the video. The other thing that we're going to give away is this little light here. Now we reviewed this last week, it's the Smart Light, and this is a really good product as well. So we're going to give these two products away a little bit later on in the video. So continue to watch. But today's video is about this bike here. It's about the Transition repeater. But the bike itself is a really good bike and it's in generally good condition. There's a few things that we need to do on it. It needs a bearing change. But one of the main things that we're going to do today is we're going to have a look at this particular headset. It's an Acros headset and it's a fully integrated headset. And you'll probably see these on quite a lot of new bikes that are actually coming out today. There seems to be a little bit of a trend on trying to tidy up all the cables and wires to get them running down into the headset through the frame, just to kind of tidy all things up. I'm not sure whether I like it, to be honest. From a mechanic's point of view, it's a difficult thing because it's very difficult to work on. And this video is about how to work on this particular headset and what's involved. So let's drag you in with a camera and I'll show you what I mean. So if you look carefully, you can see all these cables and wires, because this is an e-bike and there's all these control wires as well. They all go down through the top of the headset. They go down into the down tube and all the way back to wherever they need to go. Now the problem comes really when you need to replace this headset. If the bearings actually need replacing, whether it's top or bottom, everything has to come to bits. Which in theory is a good idea. I mean, the look of it is good. It keeps all your cockpit nice and tidy, all the wires go in the same place. It enables you to keep your cables and your hoses all nice and neat to go down in the same place. But from a mechanic's point of view, it's a little bit of a nightmare. Now the problem comes when you have to take this headset to bits, because, and I'm talking about the brake hoses more than anything else, because everything else you can just disconnect. But you can't just disconnect a brake hose and pull it back to go back through this particular headset, because obviously you've got the barb and you've got the nut on the end, and the hole that goes back through this headset is too small to pull the whole lot through. So you've got to cut the hose. Now if your hoses are relatively short and nice and tight to begin with, if we're going to have to cut this to be able to replace these bearings in here, then this hose is going to become a little bit shorter than what it is at the minute. By how much depends on how much we need to cut off. But I'd say as a minimum we're going to need to be able to cut off round about 1/2 inch or 15 mil or something around there, so we can actually put a new fitting on the end and rethread it back up through the headset. Now that potentially could mean that this this hose is too short, and although it moves with the headset, it could mean that it actually looks odd, or it's too short, or there's too sharp a bend in it. The only way to do that basically is to cut it and see actually where it fits on, where it actually ends up. We might be able to reconnect it, put a new barb on, and it doesn't look out of place. But if the customer likes all his cables nice and neat, potentially we could end up having to replace this hose in its entirety to be able to make it look like it is at the moment, if that makes sense. I think you get me drift. The idea is brilliant, and I do like the idea of trying to keep your cockpit all nice and tidy. So what we're going to do is, this headset needs a service. It preferably needs the bottom bearing changing at least. But we can't do that without taking it to bits. So here we go. So there's a few things that you're going to need to be able to do this job. If you're doing it on an e-bike, then you're going to need a little tool like that. I hope you can see that, and it's in focus. It's a little tool from Shimano that enables you to remove the wires from underneath the display. The second thing, which is not essential but is definitely useful, is one of these. Now this enables you to hold handlebars at a certain height while you're working on your headset. Stops your handlebars flapping around and waving about all over the place, keeps them in one position. And also you're going to need somewhere to actually hold your forks to stop them actually dropping down on the ground as well. So you're going to need a little bit of setting up to do just to try and help you make it a little bit easier on yourself, because it is a faffy job, it's a fiddly job. And what I do is, when I'm going to video this, I'm going to try and speed it up a little bit, because if I film every little bit of this in normal speed, it'll be ages and ages. So here goes. So now that I've got the top off, I'm just going to drop the camera down a little bit so you can actually see how these cables and hoses go through. So you can see that it's a very, well, it seems like a very complex type of headset to be able to get those cables through that head tube down through the frame. You can see it's quite tight in there, and obviously you've got your fork steerer to go up through the middle as well. And as you can see here, there's different sections that enables these hoses and cables to go through. You can take this off and just pull the cables out that way, and that comes off fairly loose. But obviously replacing this headset bearing in here, you can imagine something, you've got to be able to get that headset bearing out of there somehow over these cables. So all these cables and hoses have to be disconnected. Quite a job, as you can see. So the next thing that we need to do obviously is disconnect all these cables. The Shimano E-tube wires, with those who've been disconnected, there's one loose one there, so we can actually pull that through that little rubber bung there as well. The rear derailleur, that'll need disconnecting, the dropper post as well, and this rear hose. So let's start by just taking the dropper post cable out so they all stick up free, and then that'll enable us to take this top cap off and the bearing as well. So to get that done, so this one's the rear gear cable. So that frees that up. We've freed off the dropper post cable. So all that's left now really is the rear brake hose. So we'll undo that 8mm union there. That there is his brake hose, obviously with his union, as olive and as barb on the end. So The minimum amount of hose that we're going to have to lose is obviously the length of the barb, which will bring us down to about there. So that's where I'm going to cut it. Now, fingers crossed, if there's still enough length on this cable not to look odd, then we'll be able to do that. We'll be able to use this hose rather than replacing it. If it's too short, it means a brand new hose all the way through. So we'll just get a little bit of paper to catch any mineral oil, and we'll just cut that as long as we possibly can. Now that's probably about 12 mil, but it does mean that we're going to have to use a new olive and a new barb, but potentially it means that we can actually connect this back up without losing too much hose, but we shall wait and see. So what we're going to do then, we're going to replace the top cup and the bottom cup. Obviously the bottom one is fairly straightforward. We can actually work on that without affecting these hoses and cables. So what we're going to do is we need to tap these cups out from either side just to get them out of the frame. We need to be careful obviously because it's carbon frame. One bearing gone. There we are. So that's the bottom cup. That's what's actually left of it. You can see the bearing's actually jumped out on its own. It's dropped to bits on the way through. So that's the actual bottom cup. So we'll put that to one side. Okay. As we can see, that's the top cup out now, which is there. This is actually plastic. So now, as you can see, we've got both cups out. We've taken all the cables and we've disconnected the hoses, and they're all free flowing out of the top, if you like. So what we need to do now is give the top cap, the frame, a little bit of a clean and a wipe, and then we'll take a look at the new headset. So this headset has come direct from Acros in Germany. It didn't take that long to come, probably about 3 or 4 days. It cost around about 80 and 90 quid, and it comes in 2 halves. Obviously you've got the top part and the bottom. So we'll just take a look what you get in here. There's his bottom cup. Okay, complete with crown race. There's the bearing already in there, so we don't need to take that out. And there's a little bit of a seal as well on the inside, which is a good idea because it stops water getting down into the bottom. So that's the bottom cup. The top one, there we are. Fancy boxes. Headset grease. And here is the cup for the top. Okay. Now the one thing that it doesn't come with is the rubber grommets for the top and the actual top cap itself. So it comes obviously with the insert, the bearing, and there's the cup for the top. Okay, so it comes fairly complete, but the thing to remember is if you've damaged your actual top cup, if you've damaged your top cap at any point in this process, then you're going to need to order a separate one. But that's the top and the bottom. Let's get them in. Give it a clean, give it a wipe. Now the one thing that's different on the new one than the old one is the top one is metal. It's aluminium, not plastic. So we'll get us trusty headset press. Now this is a beautiful tool. It's probably one of the most used tools in our workshop is the headset press. Great tool. So what we want to do is apply a little bit of ketchup on the underside. So this is the one that's going to be going underneath. So we'll just pop that in there very loosely for now, just so it stays in place. So what we've got to think about now is, it's all right using this bearing press, but how are we going to be able to get it all through and start to press it together without damaging these cables here? Well, I'll show you, because what we're going to do is we're going to tuck them down the bottom. Now we need to just put them through just enough so we can actually still get hold of the cables when we need to pull them back, but are not going to squash them when we're trying to press it in. So that's his bottom one. So if we just drop that in there and being very careful what we're going to actually press against. Okay, it's a bit of a balancing act, to be honest. Okay, just lining it up, making sure it's all nice. Here we are. Beautiful. And that leaves us to put the top one in. Just smear that around the outside. And this acts as an anti-seed as well as a grease to anti-seize to stop it getting stuck in there. Making sure them wires are not in the way, not going to get trapped. There we go. Brilliant. You don't need to press it in too hard, just enough so you feel the resistance, and then you can stop. Okay. Now this process is probably going to take 3 times as long as what it would do to do an ordinary headset change. Okay. So we've got a rear hose, a rear dropper cable, and the gear cable is in there somewhere. All his cables are back through the top, including his Di2 wire for his display. We've got his brake hose, we've got his dropper cable, and we've got his rear gear cable there. So all that leaves us to do now basically is to drop these back in. Now obviously there's a right hand channel and a left hand channel. So if I remember rightly, the Di2 went in the right. The rear hose went in the left, I believe. Just need to be careful how you put these in. The rear gear cable went in the left, and the dropper post went in the right, if I remember rightly. Now this is the fiddly bit, making sure that we don't trap these hoses. Okay, just like that. And you can see how all that now fits back together. Making sure that we don't trap any cables or wires or hoses. Okay, that fits in there like that. Okay, can put us headset spacers back on. I've spent a little bit of time off camera just kind of getting this back together, but you can see what the end result is. The reason why I did that basically is because it takes quite a long time to actually get all these hoses and wires in the right position, so they come nicely through and obviously even again. I've put the top cap back on and I've put the rubber bungs back in. I've just basically sat the stem on top just to kind of stop these rubber bungs coming out again. So this is the brake hose. Now if we offer this back up to there, we can actually see that it's actually still long enough. So we're not going to have to replace it, which is an absolute godsend. Because you can imagine what a job it's going to be to replace that hose, particularly when it's going over at motor and it's going over the top at battery. It's not generally straightforward. It's quite time consuming. So I'm really glad that we're not going to have to replace that. So what we need to do is we need to put a shroud back on. So we've put the plastic shroud back on and the union as well. So you can see that there. We're going to put an olive on, a Magura olive on, and then we've got a brand new fresh barb that we need to just push down there. Now you can actually kind of push that through and grab hold of it and just make sure it goes home, but we like to use a little tool, just makes it a little bit easier. Just helps us push that little barb as far as it'll go without having to break us thumbs or us fingers trying to do it. And that's nice and neat in its place. All we need to do now then with that basically is push it back into the brake lever, make sure it's still right, pushed up at the end, and then just tighten that union up. Just nip that up. You don't need to nip it up too much. You can feel when it's going to be tight, and then we just put that back over there. Okay, now if we feel that there's a little bit too much hose here, we can just push a little bit, so we can push a little bit back down, as long as it remains nice and neat. That's it. That's beautiful. So what I'll do is I'll connect all these cables back up, and once I've done that, I'll come back and then we'll just finish the job off. We've managed to get everything back together. We've got all the hoses in. We still need to bleed the back brake, which is obviously a different video altogether. So that, in a nutshell, is how to change an Acros fully integrated headset. Now, they're very, very complicated. They're very time consuming to do. They do make your cables and your hoses look quite neat. Whether because of what's involved with changing bearings, whether that has an impact on whether you buy a bike with an Acros integrated headset already in, or whether it doesn't, or whether it bothers you or whether it doesn't. That's what's involved if you need to change one, and you need to bear that in mind. So, on that note, back to the free giveaways. We've got two of the, well, we've got one of each to give away. We're going to give them to the same person. Can't be bothered posting stuff out all over the place. Well, so we're going to give them to the same subscriber. We're going to choose one at random, or rather my wife will, to make it completely fair. The first one that she chooses, as long as it's UK, then these will be in the post to you. So, thanks for watching. Please subscribe if you've not done already. And toodle pip.